You're listening to the Crowdfunding Nerds Podcast, a podcast that will help you succeed before, during, and after your crowdfunding event. And now, here is your host, Andrew Lowen.
Welcome to Crowdfunding Nerds, everybody. I am your esteemed, fearless leader who fears much. I don't know. I'm joined as always by Sexy Irish Sean and Richard the Taken, whom he shall henceforth be known for the rest of this podcast.
I must be in trouble because you used my full name.
Richard the Taken. Well, it seemed like a Knight of the Round Table name. That's kind of what I was going for.
Leroy Jenkins. That's now my new introduction.
Thanks for blowing out my speakers.
Yeah, before this podcast, we played the What's Up commercial, we did the Leroy Jenkins joke, and we looked at the Mr. T Snickers commercial that says "Get some nuts,"
and we're just warming up.
That was a lot of fun. But this podcast is not about those things. This podcast is actually about something that drives me crazy when somebody gets an email on their list and then doesn't know what to do from that point on. What to do once somebody subscribes to your email list. They've indicated that maybe they've gone to your landing page with an ad and they've joined your email list, and now what? And so we are here to tell you how to turn a cold lead that just joined your email list into a raving fan that is striving to be the very first backer on day one. When people get 1,000 leads on their email list and then fail to fund, or get just there are lots and lots of stories I've heard over the years, but when that happens, it is always because they got emails that they did not engage. So each email actually represents a person, or it should at least. And if you are not engaging the person behind that email, they're not going to open their wallet up to what it is that you have to sell. So that is what this podcast is about. And I'm excited to dive in. What do you guys think?
All I heard was get their email and then spam, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Is that the TLDR for this podcast?
Spam. Thank you, ma'am.
It is better to spam than to do nothing.
I'm assuming that the reason you're collecting emails is to broaden, people's knowledge about your future and upcoming product. So I'm assuming you want to send them an email once you get their email address, right?
If you've ever looked at the Underpants Gnomes, they actually have a case study where it's very similar to the way a lot of creators behave when they get emails. Step 1, get email. Step 2, Step 3, profit. So that is the Underpants Gnomes formula. So step 1, get underwear. Step 2, we don't know what. Step 3, profit. And yeah, you don't want to have a plan like that.
Do you think that happens because a lot of people are setting up email systems and just set it, forget it, where it's automatic once you set something up like that, set up a mail system like MailChimp, Aweber, etc., and automatically just collects the emails. And how I'm assuming once people do set up, they're like, okay, I'm done with that task. Okay, let's go on the next task. So what would be some things that people should do to get more involved in their email system?
Yeah, one of the number one things I think about, because first of all, as I'm going through this process myself, Deliverance coming to Kickstarter on June 8th and everything, there are so many things to do and so many things competing for my time and attention. And the email list is another one of those things. And really what it comes down to is the order of priority. So that certain things are of a very high priority. For example, if my Kickstarter page is not ready by the time we launch, it's not gonna go well for me. And so I need to work with my graphic designer and get that thing live, get it ready, because I can't afford to have it ready a week late, right? So in the same way, emails are of a very high priority. But as soon as you send an email, you can switch your attention to other tasks, and you don't have to worry about emails 24/7. But it is an extremely, extremely important thing. Have a schedule that you send an email on a specific date, and you have to have the email ready. And then, I guess you can let it rest for a little while. But that email schedule is extremely important. And I don't think I answered your question.
Well, speaking of extremely important, I heard Deliverance in there. Why don't you give us this week's Deliverance update?
All right. Yeah, sure. So we got our Kickstarter landing page live. And in the first day, it's been about a day since we announced it. We have about 730 followers. Our email list is approaching 3,700, and our Facebook group just crossed 2,000. We're ramping ads and other things like that, and our goal is to fund on the first day and then really blow up the ads after that. So that's kind of what I'm setting up to do. And like I said, there are a lot of plates in the air. We have our Kickstarter video team. They are working on our GIFs for our images, or for gameplay, so that people scrolling the Kickstarter page can see the how the game works in just a really quick, easy set of GIFs. And then also they're polishing the video, which is almost done. It should be done this week. Then I've got my graphic designer, Chip Cole, actually is putting the elements of the Kickstarter page together. That should hopefully be ready a week from now. And then I can, share, by the time this podcast goes live, I should hopefully be able to share, maybe a few days after, I should be able to share a link to the preview page for everybody, if anybody wanted to see.
But
And
Andrew, you also had a very exciting meeting with BackerKit. So you want to go into a little bit of
yes.
details of what that was like?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of really great meetings with vendors. So one of the most essential things that I consider it essential to a Kickstarter campaign is a pledge manager. So you absolutely need a pledge manager, and the best ones that I've worked with from the outside are BackerKit and GameFound. But when you compare from the inside, there really is no comparison at the moment. BackerKit is far superior to GameFound. The level of customer service that you get, the amount of attention and help that you can get, it's really second to none in my view. Other pledge managers are free to try to change my mind on that, but just based on my experience, you get all the stuff you need from, like afterward when you market, you've got Facebook ads can actually track how many people have purchased, which is excellent. GameFound can do the same thing, but there are other pledge managers that can't, and that drives me nuts. But then, the whole shipping and getting to charge afterward, it's a really big deal. With BackerKit, they actually have a deal for you where if you sign up before your Kickstarter project launches, you get their best rates. And they are serious about that. If you launch your Kickstarter campaign and then contact them, you do not get their best rates. Their best rate is like 2% of the funds that you raise. If you raise like $1 million, it's 1.55% of your total funds raised. They do have like a sliding scale. You get a bonus if you use BackerKit marketing, which it looks like that I will be using. So in addition to my own marketing skill set, I will also be relying somewhat on BackerKit for their marketing expertise, because they have 14 million Kickstarter backer profiles that they can, like 14 million unique Kickstarter backers in their system that they can, and they can leverage those data sets, which is really cool. I certainly don't expect it to, take my campaign from, from nothing to, over the moon, but I definitely expect it to amplify what it is that we're doing with ads and podcasts and everything else.
And Andrew, do they charge in a commission per sale once your Kickstarter's wrapped up and you're selling on the natural platform?
Yes. So the way that BackerKit operates, they have pretty sophisticated way to track, and it's a very dangerous two-edged sword, let's say. They will front all of the ad spend at first, and what they charge you is, so at the end of the campaign, they will charge you for all the ad spend, plus they'll charge you 15% of whatever the Kickstarter back end says came through their system. So in addition to the ad spend, they are charging a commission on sales. So if, let's say, they spend $2,000 in ads and they generate, I don't know, let's just keep it simple, $5,000 in sales, that's going to be $7,000, or no, I'm sorry, $2,000 that you pay them back for the ad spend. And then $5,000 in sales would be $750. 15% of that is $750 that you would owe them.
Which is
So
good because it gives them an incentive, right, to make your ads as profitable as possible, because they're actually getting a cut of how successful your ad spend is.
right. So they focus so much on return on ad spend. Their benchmark is 3 to 1. So every $3 that they bring in, you spend $1. So it's that actually is a pretty close to what I find a break even point for a company doing that. Let's say you made $3 and your ad spend was $1. The total amount that BackerKit's going to take out is $1.45. Now, that whatever remains over, and in this little $3 example, we have $1.55 is what we get to keep. That's after the ad spend, after BackerKit's fees, and that kind of thing. So that is about just over 50% margin. So if let's say I have my board game is $100 and it's going to cost me a certain amount to ship it, which is, let's say, $20 to $20 to print it, and then let's say $15 more I want to subsidize to ship, and then another $15 for graphic design and art. Just again, to keep things simple, that would be $50 is what it would cost me to make that game happen and get it onto your table. That would give me a margin left of 50%. At the moment, with the little equation that I just did, $1.45 is just barely better than break even. So $1.50 would have been completely break even at this point. So all this is to say,
And have you included the Kickstarter fee and the Stripe fee?
so yeah, the entire margin. So
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, if it costs you 50% of or $50 to get it made and shipped and everything, and you're right, there are additional fees, and that's something that you as a creator absolutely have to know your numbers before you go to Kickstarter. That might be something that we would talk about on a future podcast. But I know people are think math is hard, and it is, but if I were to use BackerKit, the basically the bottom line is that it'll cost me about $48 or $45, let's say. I think the actual number is $47.50 at the end of the day. So if it's a 3-to-1 return on investment or return on ad spend, I'm gonna make almost nothing off of the game. Now, why would I do that? And again, I hope I make 10-to-1. $10 in for every dollar spent. I mean, that is not unrealistic at all. But if, let's say, BackerKit does break even and we do get a 3-to-1 return, then I think it's still worthwhile, because your game is going to be spread to more tables. More people will talk about it. More people will share with more people, and you're going to get a better reception overall than if you were just to do it yourself. So if you can take, let's say I would sell, I don't know, 2,000 games on my own. If I can partner with BackerKit, sell another 2,000 or maybe 1,000 more, yeah, I might not have made any money on that extra that I sold. Let's say at the end of the day, it might just be a nominal amount of money that we made. That is going to be, it's still going to work in my favor, because it's going to be at 1,000 more tables around the world that would be shared with, what is it, 50% more people, because of 2,000 versus an extra 3,000. It's going to be shared with 50% more people, and who are going to be buyers or share with others that might want to buy. And I look at Kickstarter as a marketing effort. It's not so much, I understand a lot of people will sell their stock. Some people use Kickstarter basically as a store where it's like, hey, I have a game and it's not going to distribution, it's not going to be reprinted, it's just a thing I wanted to make. And that is the beginning and the end of your project. It's only going to get printed once, maybe. And I just, first of all, I don't think that's a really great outlook for a company to have. I think that you should absolutely look to reprint, but the momentum that you build with, 1,000 games versus 2,000 games in the hands of your people is just night and day. So that's kind of some of the rationale that I look at and say, yeah, this is worthwhile. Also, now they're going to spend the amount that they think is going to give a positive return. If it's not positive, they will shut the ads off and you're out. Let's say between $600 and $2,000 is what they estimated. If you went for this and it just didn't work out, they estimate that they kind of figure that out by the time that they spend about $600 in ad spend.
So Andrew, earlier you mentioned that you had about 700 followers on Kickstarter, and that sort of threw me off, because I'm like, at first I was like, Well, why do you need followers? Because you haven't even launched it. There's no page. Your project page is not public. People can't see it. They can't back it. So you can't do pledges. I'm like, what's the point? Well, then silly old me, I went to Kickstarter and I told Kickstarter, because you could do filters. I have it set to show me upcoming projects in all categories on Earth. Apparently, Earth is a thing, so global. And right now at Kickstarter, Deliverance is number 3. And it's right there
Really?
on the top of the fold. So if you, as of this recording, so when it comes out, maybe it'll be, well, I think it'll be launched by the time this comes out. But yeah, so you're on the top of the fold for upcoming projects by popularity. You're right now, The Witcher Old World is beating you, and some guy is doing Groovy Dice is beating you. But other than that, you are number 3 on Kickstarter for upcoming projects.
That's awesome.
Woo!
That's
And
cool.
I'm sure that there will be others that, are that get launched after that are huge and that kind of thing. But that's very cool.
Now,
Very cool.
did
Very exciting.
you when you got approved for your page? Did you send out like an email to your because we're going to be talking about email? Did you send out an email to your followers about liking this or supporting this?
Well, somebody doesn't read the Deliverance email updates.
No, I get them in my inbox and they're in my work box, and I'm like, this doesn't work, so I just like shove it aside. And
That's funny.
I tell myself I'll get back to it, but work's busy.
Yeah, your job is just to make sure that they get sent, right? So yeah, it's interesting because part of the, I guess, the goal of what, in fact, maybe even the first on the topic that we're kind of purposing ourselves to discuss on this podcast. What do you do after you get an email? One of the things is you need to win the right to communicate across as many mediums as possible. I say that every once in a while, but Kickstarter, they have a pre-launch page that you can get people to follow, and it will send them a notification when your project launches. It'll send them a notification when you have 48 hours remaining, and it'll send another notification when you have 8 hours remaining. And those are automatic. All they have to do is be following, and Kickstarter will send that out. That pairs nicely with an email that you send with a Facebook message, a Discord, server message or whatever. All of that together it can result in a lot of people backing at the same time. And so one of our strategies is to eventually create the Kickstarter page and to get as many followers as possible. And we sent out the email a day ago. And so we've had about 750 people follow it in a day. And that feels pretty good. I hope that we can get it up to maybe 1,500, 2,000 before we launch. I wonder, how many of those, let's say those initial 7, right now I'm looking at it, it's 734 followers. How many of those 734 followers are hardcore rabid fans, right? The highest, I don't want to say the highest is it. I mean, I've seen at the last I've tracked, on the high end, you can expect like 25% of these people to convert on the first day, just as far as looking at projects on the first day and seeing the conversion numbers. Commonly, I've seen, decent projects at like really, I guess, between 18 and 25% of their followers on the first day convert. But I expect that of these 734, they are my hardcore fans. I would expect like 50% of those people to convert. By the time the project actually launches, maybe we'll have 1,500 or 2,000. I could see the total number of those followers that convert at 25%. But my rabid hardcore fans are going to be a much higher percentage of conversion. And so there you go.
Yeah, the only downside I can see right now, because like I said, I like Kickstarter. I like doing looking at projects and stuff, but I'm not a heavy purchaser. I do buy stuff every once in a while. But for someone who may really be a diehard fan of your game, but if not, now I'm going to guess that the majority of people who are going to be backing your game have already have a Kickstarter account. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of your future backers are already people who've done Kickstarter before. They've already bid on things before, made pledges, and have received product before. However, the one thing that I'm slightly disappointed in, and maybe this is probably Kickstarter marketing to get more emails, for you to be notified. So I'm on the page right now, and for me to be notified, you actually have to create and log into Kickstarter.
Yep.
So you can't just say, click on the notify button, put in your email, and be like, I'm not going to be notified. I wish it did that for this segment of Kickstarter, because I mean, I think that would get more people who, because you're going to have your percentage of people who have never done a Kickstarter before, and then this may scare them off. Oh, I got to create an account. Oh,
Right.
I don't, So I'm thinking, for me, I think that's one downside of this notification system. Otherwise, I think it's phenomenal because,
Hmm.
like I said, as a publisher, it's sending out emails automatically on your behalf during certain intervals before the game was launched, and if you get a lot of followers, it's going to put you up there on the top of their page for upcoming games. So I think that's pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah, so Andrew,
Absolutely.
you spoke about actually running an ad campaign that targets people who have already signed up to your mailing list, to target those people on Facebook to encourage them to follow
Mhm.
on this page. And that would be really interesting to see the results of that campaign, because it's a retargeting campaign. These people are already familiar with your product, your brand. So you would expect that the conversion rates of those emails, of those leads to that, hit that notify me on launch button, would be quite high. So
Mhm.
that might be a really good return on ad spend.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because, both Sean, you and Rick brought up really good points that first of all, you're going to have, so to address, I guess, in reverse order, Sean, you were talking about a retargeting campaign. People that have seen your project already, maybe even subscribed as an email, on the email list, those people are great candidates to send ads because some of them, I mentioned, we had like 30, almost 3,700 people on the email list right now. 700 and some of them jumped on right away and followed, and these people know Kickstarter, and they don't have any most, for the most part, they probably didn't have any issue. They had, maybe backed other campaigns before and that sort of thing. Those people would be great still to show ads, because that, just because they follow your campaign and everything doesn't mean they're going to back. But with retargeting, it has a really high conversion rate. Retargeting has a very high conversion rate, like 4 times higher than a normal ad. And in some cases, way higher than that. So I think that that's a really important part of our strategy. It doesn't need to be a very expensive part, but there are a lot of people who visited our website that we're retargeting right now. Also, even people who have subscribed to our email list that we're targeting right now. We have probably about a 40% open rate on average with our emails, and that means that 60% of those people didn't open a particular email. Well, they're actually, the numbers get, when you refine them down in an email list, are even a little bit more nuanced than that. But there's a big percentage of people that sign up for an email and literally never open a single email you ever send. So that number with Deliverance is actually about 800 people. So are there 800 emails that have signed up for notifications, probably using a junk email or something like that, and or maybe even their regular Gmail account or something, but it goes to a promotions tab, which they never look at, let's say. Those people would be very interested in the project, but aren't going to open your emails. So if you can target with a retargeting campaign, you would target people on your email list, or also people that visited your website. We have over 5,000 people in the last month that have visited the Deliverance landing page. All those people represent very highly qualified candidates to go to this Kickstarter page. We also are sending them to the Kickstarter I call it the pre-launch page, which is not our website landing page, for a particular purpose. Maybe they've already signed up for the email list, but in a large part, they will not have signed up for Kickstarter notifications. So we could end up getting really, really cheap cost per click, and a really high subscriber or Kickstarter notify me on launch subscriber rate. And so that's kind of why we're doing that. And then Rick, what did you mention? Oh, yeah. So Rick, you were talking about the that the Kickstarter pre-launch page might not actually be the right place to send a lot of people, because maybe they don't really understand how to use Kickstarter yet. And that's exactly right. There are a subset of people. In fact, all the people we target with Facebook ads have the Kickstarter interest. So those people are probably going to have an account. Anybody that BackerKit would send over is probably going to have an account. However, I'll use this as one of the most common examples, is friends and family. So your friends and family that want to support you because you're you, they don't have an account. My father-in-law is a farmer, and he can barely use a computer. If not for my mother-in-law, I don't think he would even have a phone. And so he
Probably for the better.
really, yeah, I know. So he really wants to support the project. He's like, I want to go all in, just because I support you. He's never played a board game in his life, probably, and he may never do that at all, but he'll proudly display the product on his shelf because his son-in-law made it, right? And these some of these people are going to need to. You're going to need to teach them how to make a Kickstarter account and all of that. Well, it's going to be, I mean, they're not going to be able to back your Kickstarter project unless they have an account, but it would, so you'll need to kind of, have some resource to teach them. But at the same time, which by the way, a lot of people do on their Kickstarter page, they'll say, why Kickstarter or how do you use Kickstarter, which will kind of walk people through how to, create an account and then back the project and what that means and all. It's not the first place to send them to convert, right? It's just not the email. Everybody has an email. The email is the first place you send them to convert. They may or may not follow your Kickstarter campaign because they don't have an account at this point. They fully intend on supporting you and whatnot. You have to have other places that you deposit them. We call it a bank sometimes. You have to deposit the people in your various banks. One is the email system like MailChimp you mentioned, or Aweber or Constant Contact. Wix has an email marketing system. Those people might follow, they might be a whole lot more likely to follow like a Facebook page or a group, a Discord community, other places like that.
Why don't we talk about the architecture or the makeup of what makes a engaging and successful email? Maybe talk a little bit about benchmarks. So Andrew, what would you consider a decent open rate? Because the open rate dictates how many people are actually clicking and actually reading the messaging that is in your email.
For our industry, as a games industry, I think the average, like the benchmark is, I thought it was 37% or 30%, something like that. Maybe it's 31. Anyway, it's somewhere in there. So if your numbers are higher than that, that's better than average. And I would wager to say, depending on how you're building your list, you're going to get a different open rate. If you build your list in a way that really doesn't get people to think, it's a lot easier to get people to, just harass people until they give you their email. You hold people up at gunpoint and you ask for their email, they'll give it to you, but they're not going to be interested in what you have to sell, right? And obviously that's an extreme example, but you want people who voluntarily give you their email because they're interested in what you have to say. That's extremely important
And
because they're
slightly
more likely to,
invested.
right? And they're more likely to open your emails, and they're more likely if they didn't receive your email, if it went to spam, if it went to promotions folder in Gmail, they're more likely to go seek it out and say, hey, I haven't heard a thing from this company in a while. I wonder if it's in my spam. And that's exactly what you want. You want somebody who's interested and engaged and wants to receive what it is that you have to offer. So the more people you have there, the more likely it is that you're going to have a higher open rate. Our typical numbers we see for new clients that come to us and we build an email list of theirs, about 40% of an email list will open their email, as long as it's not spammy or it doesn't get caught by like Gmail's spam filter. Or
We should actually talk about that because Rick, we're always talking about SEO optimization, search engine optimization, but really there's a need for email marketing optimization because, or we could even be a bit more specific, Gmail optimization. 33% of all emails in the world are Gmail accounts, which means Google has a large monopoly on what emails can be seen. And they've got one of the strictest blacklists and spam filters, which is a blessing and a curse, right? It means you don't get flooded with spam, but also it can be a bit trigger happy, right? And things you want to see that land up in automated folders and things and can be lost. So there's certain metrics that Google ranks, whether basically like a social credit score, whether your email is worth being sent to a person. So the things which dictate Google's score is your email opened? Is it replied to? Is it forwarded? Is it marked not spam? Is the email moved to a folder? Does the domain or the sender address, has it been added to the address book of the email account? Was the email opened? And was the email marked as spam? So there's positive and negative things that can affect your Google email score. So it's really
I,
important that you craft engaging emails to leverage this system.
yes, and on top of that, what you want to do is it's where you're sending it is the most important thing in the world. Gmail is a bratty little girl. I'd say other words, but we're on public podcasting here. So Gmail is a bratty little girl. And like you said, 33% of emails are Gmail or some subsidy or connected to Gmail through businesses and whatnot. So if you want to appease the bratty little girl, you need to play with the bratty little girl. And so to do that, these are the top. You never want to send, if you have a mailing list, you don't want to send it through your own private mail server. If you have a server, I do not recommend it at all. There's so many things that you have to have lined up before services like Google and Microsoft Outlook say that you're good or not.
Mhm.
There's a lot of things you have to check. There's DKIM keys, there's SPF keys. It's a mess. The best thing to do is if you can, send it through Google. Get a Google account some way, Gmail, do Gmail Business, do G Suite, whatever you can. If you can send it through them, you're like 99% already likely to get it through because you're on their platform and they're going to accept it.
What you mean by that, by the way, is let's say if we're using a service like MailChimp to send an email to like 3,000 people. By the way, Gmail actually allows you to send an email if you BCC up to 500 people, which I don't recommend, but some people do if they really want to like keep life simple and, just use Gmail to send. That's possible. But we actually use G Suite for our emails. So Andrew at nextlevelweb.com is a G Suite email. And so, my email for Deliverance is deliverancethegame@gmail.com. I also have Andrew at deliveranceboardgame.com and things like that, but they're all managed in G Suite or Gmail.
Yeah, so the top thing you want to do is Google when you can. Now the second thing you'd want to do if you can't for some reason set up a mail system through Google is to use one of the professional mailing systems like Mailchimp, Constant Contact, etc., etc. And the reason why is because they actually have a good relationship with Google, and they have a lot of rules in place that will prevent spamming, and Google knows that. And of course, they don't want to lose their relationship with Google, so they will do their best to make sure that no spam goes out. So Google will pretty much let almost any email that goes through those systems to go through and get into
Mhm.
your inbox.
Yep, and you can do what we do and be ballers and do both, right?
That's right.
It's very important, if we send out an email, it goes out in Mailchimp, but if people respond to it and say, "Wow, I'm so excited, I have a question," it goes to my Gmail inbox, and I can go back and forth with the person in Gmail. That's Sean, you listed one of your requirements as, or one of the best practices is there are things that Google looks for as emails that are replied to, right? And so if you go back and
Mm-hmm.
forth, and really what we're doing is we're building a history of trustworthiness with a program like Gmail. You might start out with emails that go right into an inbox and then they go later to the spam folder and you wonder why. It's because the history that you're building, it's not just that individual email, the content of the email and the subject line. It's actually the history of other emails that you send. So emails that you send all matter, right? All the subject and open rates and everything, it all factors in over
Yeah, and
time.
then another con for having you don't want to do self-hosted email is a lot of these hosting servers use a shared mail server. So you may have your own IP address, you may have your own account, but when it comes to mail, it goes through a different server on the hosting company's system, and you can have hundreds to thousands of websites using the same mail server on the same IP. And if one person's naughty, it gets blacklisted, and then all your emails no longer get your recipients don't get reached to because they won't get your email at all. It won't even get to
Yep, because
So
you sold Viagra, even though you didn't.
them.
another thing that Gmail looks at is frequency. This is important because you might think, "Oh, I've crafted this really, really, engaging email," but if they're sporadic, that will actually lower your score as well. So what Gmail likes to see is a consistency that you're posting once a week or once a month. If you post here and there, two times here, and then you wait 6 months and you post again, that's seriously going to harm your Gmail social credit score, which is what it is. I
Yeah.
can't think of a better name for it, but
Well,
that's
what's
basically
also
what it is.
interesting with Gmail, like you said, frequency, they actually use frequency for many of the metrics in their system. Another interesting thing is, let's say you have a Gmail account, but you also have like another email that you want to have in the same spot, so you can pull them up, all in Gmail. Well, you can import that email. Well, Google checks the frequency of how often something goes in its inbox. And if you're only getting like an email once a week in that other email that's connected to Gmail, Gmail will only check that email once a week. So you might have an urgent email that comes in, and Gmail won't even recognize it until it checks. So
Mhm.
frequency is big when it comes to Gmail on all aspects of the spectrum. Not only yourself sending emails, but also you receiving emails in other accounts, which I think is interesting. I think they do that, of course, to keep bandwidth down and whatnot. But it's interesting because it actually sort of has an algorithm where it figures out how often you get emails from a specific email address, and it'll only check that email address within that frequency.
Yeah, that's weird. Kind of the practical way that applied to an account of ours. We have this solar company that we do SEO marketing for, and we set up their email service a long time ago, and we used G Suite, and we used others in the past as well, but like Mac Mail and other things that they were used to. But when we switched to G Suite, we would have sometimes like a 4 hour delay where they would send a contract out to a customer, and the contract is worth a boatload of money because it's solar, and the customer doesn't get it, and they're like, wait, where's my contract? You said I'd get it. And it just was frustrating for them, but they were brand new email accounts, and they were sending big PDFs. And so there are a bunch of tripwires to be aware of. And I guess the moral of this story is, don't set your email up right before you go to Kickstarter. Make sure it's working for you well before that. Make sure that people are receiving your emails, opening them, and appreciating them. And then if there's any issue, you can probably go back to this podcast at this point and troubleshoot and find exactly what the problem was.
So
So mhm.
one of the keys to any of your marketing efforts is understanding your people and how to hit their pressure points and how to communicate your brand and your product in a way that's really going to resonate with them. We just had a call with uh, Facebook guru, and he
Part two.
basically, part two, and he just stressed this again with us, the importance of your brand messaging and your advertisement, not so much the audiences and the mathematical metrics. Those are important, but what's at the core, the foundation, is your messaging to your target audience, hitting their pressure points and being very, very good and clear at that. So the same thing applies with your Facebook ads. It also applies to your emails. So Andrew, have you noticed any of your emails have just really resonated with your audience? And if so, is anyone that stands out? And what was it about?
Yeah, so there are certain emails that we'll send out are just going to have a much higher open rate, click through rate, that kind of thing. So, one example of an email that, just worked out this way is, so our typical emails, we send them out. And again, leading into Kickstarter, we are looking to provide information. And I guess we can talk about some of those, the standard things that you need to do with emails and why you're sending them and what they're meant to do, and that sort of thing. But for the most part, our emails, we send information. So I expect to receive a decent open rate and a very low click through rate. So, one of the last emails that I sent had a 33.8% open rate and a 3.1% click through rate. Now, when I sent the Kickstarter landing page email, I have just in, I guess, like 2 days, I have a 43.9% open rate, and the click through rate is 23.3%. So just at the moment, like over 1,000 people opened it and 560 people clicked. So it's 1,063 opens, 565 clicks. That is extremely high. That's like 50%, over 50% of the people that opened it actually clicked on the link. And that was specifically meant for them to click. So that is an example of an email with a clear call to action where I want them to do something for me. The actual subject line of that email was an angel face, the Deliverance Kickstarter page is up, and then the preview text was get notified when we launch on Kickstarter. So a lot of people saw it. They're going to be people that see your email subject line and say, "Oh, that's great. Deliverance is still doing its thing," but they don't open it, and that's it. There are a lot of people that are waiting, for the Kickstarter page to launch, and they they're gonna they all clicked, right. So uh, that's one of the reasons that we got so many project followers so quickly in a day or whatever it is specifically because of that email. Now, just maybe this is a bonus for people listening. So we'll probably level out at about maybe 48% of the people that receive this email will open it, because it's only been like a day and a half since we sent it, and or maybe 2 days. And usually the email open rate increases over the period of maybe 1 to 2 weeks. For the most part, 1 week you're going to get the majority. Like within 2 days, you're going to get the majority of opens, and then over the course of the week, you'll get more, and then it'll really drop off after that. But for me, I'm actually going to create what I call a resend. People that I created so I will send the exact same email with a slightly changed subject line to all of the people that did not open that email. And I expect to get another at least 20% opens, and 10% of those people will click. So that's something I think is super important, especially when you really, really need people to activate and do stuff for you. There you go. Now in the past, we would have emails and by the way, that wasn't sent to my entire list. That was sent to my engaged list. The people that don't open as much, I don't want to send them as many emails. I don't want to be as pushy and proddy to them, because they're not as interested. They're not as willing to, to jump on board. But I want to send to them. I just need to, I guess pick my
Pick your
choose my
battles.
shots. Yeah,
Pick your
exactly.
battles.
Yeah. So, if I send an email to what I call the never openers, the segment of my list
So
that,
Rick,
yeah, yeah, Rick, exactly. The people, a percentage of my list that literally never opens. Let's see,
Guilty.
how many people is that? Let me find one. So I sent one in March to my never openers, and how many people overall did I send to?
Now,
597. So there are 597 people who have never opened an email of mine, and there are 37 of those people actually did open. So something like 6.2%, I think, is the number of people that I actually got to open an email for the very first time. 3 people click, and it's like 10% of or 8% of the people that open, and one of them unsubscribed, and that's totally cool with me.
so you're throwing out all these statistics about open rates and click-through rates, and you're talking about resending emails to people who didn't open. How do you get this information? Is this tied into your mail system you're using, or is this a third-party software or web app, or how are you getting this information, and what do you recommend to people who are listening to use to get this information? Because I think that's pretty good information to know. Especially I like the idea about resending emails to people who didn't open the first time. That's really cool.
Definitely.
Without manually sitting through and seeing who opened, who didn't, do it yourself.
Mhm.
If there's a tool where you just click and it does it, that's pretty awesome. I think our listeners would really like to know where that came from.
Absolutely. It very much is useful, and MailChimp is the answer. So with MailChimp, you can see all of those numbers. You can see a lot of those numbers with other email marketing programs as well. But what I love about MailChimp, first of all, they have an app which is better than everyone else's by far. If ever you add emails in person, or you want to look at this stuff on your phone, it's easy. And then also on the app, you can actually go to one of your emails that it's sent, and you can um, do something called resend to non-openers. So it would duplicate the email and then target all the people who didn't open, and it would be done in basically just a few taps of your finger on your phone surface. I don't know, like I'd say clicks, but it's weird.
And then you also
So
talked about the never senders, the never openers. How do you determine who's a never opener? And is it like a segment on your list, or how did you set that up?
yeah, so whenever I create an email and I send it out, I send it to a very particular segment of my audience. I call it the main segment, the main list. So I send it to contacts that match any of the following conditions. Number one, they join the email list within the last 60 days. Obviously, somebody just joins my email list, they'll have never opened an email from me, right? And so I want to make sure that they get an opportunity to send or to open an email and become one of those people. Another thing is so if they've been added on in the last 60 days, they're getting my emails no matter what. Then number two, if they've opened any of the last 10 campaigns I've ever sent, that is another criteria that I look at. And then a third one, you can, if so they might not have been added within the last 60 days, but if they've looked at any one of the last 10 emails I've sent, which might be the last, 5-6 months of time, then they get this quote unquote main email. And then if their email marketing engagement is low, you can actually set that. Or if you can say if they've never opened an email from me, don't send it, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I put together my main list. And then for the other, so if I send an email to what I call my never openers, what I'll do is I'll target people that were straight up not sent the main email. So if you weren't sent the main email, you're going to be sent the never opener email. It's a word for word copy of the first email. I literally go in and then I replicate the email. I copy the email and then I might change the subject line, or maybe I won't. But the main thing, the reason that I split those two is for all of the other reasons that we talked about. We talked about Gmail wants to see that people are opening your emails and interacting and that sort of thing. And my main list opens and interacts. They're awesome. They're engaged. They're hardcore. And then there are people who, rarely, if or maybe never interact. And I don't want the people that never interact to drag down the email. Right now 44% or whatever of the email or the email addresses that I sent my Kickstarter landing page email to opened it. So if I were to include everybody, that might be like 30 to or 35% or 30 to 32%. And that would not look as good to Gmail. So I'm actually building some history so that when it comes time to send an email to all of those never openers, that I'm going to get a much better deliverability rate than I would otherwise.
So another thing of emails is the first point of contact really is your subject line. So it's really important that your subject line is engaging and that it's truthful, so that people don't feel like they're being slighted. Andrew, could you give some tips on how to write an appropriate subject line that gets the email open, which is what we want? Is any hacks to that strategy or to this?
Some of the basic tenets are that people tend to remember the first 3 words and the last 3 words. So if you make your subject line 6 words, they remember all of it. 7 words isn't bad. Some subject lines, you just don't want them to be too long. I would always recommend to use an emoji, just one, and it tends to get people's attention. It tends to stand out. It's like a picture inside, otherwise a heavily text-based program, your email program, whatever it is. I would always also recommend almost like the TLDR, like the too long, didn't want to read it. What, can you give me a summary of what's in this email if I open it? You'll get a certain percentage of people, a pretty large percentage, in fact, that'll read the subject line and not proceed further. And it doesn't mean that people are not paying attention to you. It just means that they just decided not to open it. But the subject line is extremely valuable real estate because you'll be able to give people an update. People in our Kickstarter the Kickstarter pre-launch page, they know the Kickstarter pre-launch page is live. They know the campaign is launching June 8th because those types of things have been in my subject lines. So I think that's very important. But in general, the subject line needs to explain what your email is about. It's like the thesis statement of an essay. It's the main idea of the email. As much as you can, it should have a call to action. And so check out, get, read, whatever a verb that calls people to action should be used. instead of just having like a very vague headline. I never want to see blah blah monthly newsletter, or this is something I use for the subject line, is a specific thing with a call to action. And then the preview text, which is the text that appears immediately afterward, can be I use Deliverance Insider, March 2021 edition or May 2020, whatever, right? And that's what I use to, that's kind of some of the basics in the subject line. You should absolutely test your subject lines. And the more punchy the subject line, the better. Don't use all caps, and if you want to be spammy, you'll use things. So don't use the word free. I mean, certain words actually trigger spam
Yeah,
filters.
we should
Free,
we should talk about
last
that.
chance, offer, anything with a number in it.
Sale.
I mean, yeah, just even a $sign is going to be a spam filter. So yeah, it was
Right.
the weirdest thing I heard. Anything with a number in it.
Any sexual reference, I'm sure. Anything
Yeah.
to do with body parts.
Yeah, and like we said, that little bratty girl Gmail is very sensitive. So even if you have some sort of mention of those words, maybe you only say it once, or maybe you sort of reference something like that, you may get put into the promotion column on Gmail, as opposed to, you may not go directly to spam, you may not go directly to jail and not get sent at all, but you may still end up in that promotion tab. And I've seen that happen. One of our clients, not Kickstarter, one of our clients with email had an email problem because they were sending all the specs of their product in every single email. And it had prices, it had, a button to order now. And all of a sudden he's like, why is my email going into spam? Why is no one getting my emails? And then we figured out that's the reason why. And so we made it so that stuff doesn't show up in emails, because it's just it gets blocked. There's actually a great tool also online for those of you listening. It's called mail-tester.com, and when you go to the page, it gives you a weird random code email that it wants you to send your email to, and you send the email that you want to send out to people to this email that it gives you, and then you hit the button that says check your score, and it'll actually go through the entire email. It'll give it a spam rating. It'll also check your IP address to see if it's blocked, if it's on a blacklist. It goes through all these different stages of your email. So if you ever are interested or concerned about what you're sending out may or may not be spammy, I would recommend going to mail-tester.com and send your email to them, and that automated system will tell you how legit or not legit your email is.
Just be careful how you spell that.
Yeah.
I think that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more information about our podcast and access to our articles, resources, and past podcasts, visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. Also, exactly 1 week from today, June 8th, 2021, at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Deliverance, the game, will launch on Kickstarter. And if you haven't done so already, visit deliverencethegame.com, get on that email list. Or if you're an awesome Kickstarter fan and already have a Kickstarter account, go into Kickstarter and get the notify button, so that way you can get updated on the exact minute the game goes live. And trust me, you want to be there when it happens, because we're going to be crashing Kickstarter servers. That's what's going to happen. We're number 3 right now. Number 3 on upcoming games. So that's what's going to happen. Thank you to all of you for listening to us today. And we will see you all next week on launch day, nerds. Adios. Stay nerdy.
We did an episode where Jamie Stegmaier was not mentioned.
Ah, dang it.